Check this.
Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be about group versus individual identity. One of the things that people think about is whether we should classify ourselves as a group, white people, black people, women, people of color, all these different groups, or should we look at ourselves as individuals? Now, there's a real debate going on between the left and the right. Right now, the left seems to be in a very collectivist group identity kind of camp. And the very far right, the alt-right, seems to be in also a group collectivist kind of attitude as well, where they are talking about white nationalism and nationalist ideas of the groups. And then there's the right, which are more center of the spectrum, who are looking at it and saying, well, no, it's really about the individual, that we're all individuals and we all have our own identity, and we shouldn't fall prey to these group identities because that's the way of Marxism. And a lot of people that are on the right, but not alt-right, would go by that kind of philosophy, that they think that the way forward is to avoid group politics, group identity politics, and look only at the individual. Whether you succeed or fail, that's based on your individual merit. And merit's a very important part of the center of these two spectrums, that they look at the importance of the individual to make their own decision, that individual is not a reflection of their group identity, but a reflection of their own choices and their own decisions. Now, which of these philosophies is correct? So on the left, we have a group identity being oppressor, oppressed. On the extreme right, we have group identity being not oppressed, but essential for nationhood, that a nation is really a reflection of the group, and usually there's an ethnic basis for that group. For example, Britain. Well, Britain is historically a white nation. Canada, historically a white nation. US, historically a white nation. And Africa is usually considered to be comprised of historically black nations. So these are all sort of racially based group identities. Now, under the extreme left, the group identity is the collectivist, kind of socialist Marxist way of thinking, that everybody's equal, and therefore we can form a collective group where all the pieces within that group are all basically the same, and therefore we can have a group identity of commonality. And in a socialist world, that works very well, because if everybody's equal, everybody's the same, then they can all work together. They also have, and it sounds like a contradictory mindset, they have this idea of the two types of groups being the oppressor and the oppressed. And under Marxism, one of the concepts they really love is the idea that the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, are oppressing the workers. Well, as cultural Marxism came about, we have the concept of not just the capitalist and worker, but of the white versus black, the white oppressor over the black population, or the majority over the minority. And the idea of group identity becomes defining yourself within a myriad of individual minority groups, whether it's women, even though there's more women than men, that doesn't matter. They're an oppressed group, and the men are their oppressors. So it's this oppressor versus oppressed. And the idea, just like under Marxism, is that the oppressed will rise up and kill off the oppressor. And then we'll have a free society, a just society, because all the oppressors will be gone. So that's how the group identity politics works for the far left. And then there's this individualism that comes from the center or right, a little bit right of center. More conservatives, but not white nationalists or alt-right. And one of those individuals that's an authority within the center-right would be Jordan Peterson, a man I have great respect for. But one problem I find with Jordan Peterson is that he's into this individual politics, and he really hates the idea of group identity. Now, there's a flaw in that. And this is why I'm posing it as these three groups, where there's a problem that we can't ignore our group identity. There is a group identity. There is a cultural identity that we're part of. There's a national identity that we're part of. Jordan Peterson, like myself, is Canadian, and there is a Canadian identity. We may be individuals within that society, but there's still a Canadian identity that we can associate with, and we have the cultural understanding of. And it forms who we are as individuals. But then there's also a biological identity that we cannot deny, that certain groups will behave slightly different from each other based on biology. For example, men versus women. There's a male traits versus female traits, and there's group identity that's associated with both of those. So in some ways, the left is right, in the far left, in terms of the idea that there is these groups. However, to Jordan Peterson's credit, he says that there is no oppressor-oppressed narrative. It's not that we're oppressors or oppressed. It's that we're both groups, in this case, men and women, or black versus white. Well, we're all working to survive. We're all trying to survive, and we're not really trying to oppress anybody. We're not trying to bring somebody down in order to survive. We're just trying to survive. And that means sometimes we have to work together, and there is a power dynamic within working together. We're all striving to be better and to move up in society, and that's how we work as individuals, that we seek opportunity, we seek growth. That's a natural instinct, that we have to go out and get food, get the things that we need in order to survive. And if we don't, we'll perish. And rather than seeing those power structures that come out of that natural tendency, the left sort of assume that it's this power dynamic of oppressor-oppressed. Well, Jordan rightly suggests that that's a flawed philosophy. But where Jordan makes a mistake, and I find him saying this very often, is that he ignores the effect of the group. I would almost love to just interview the man and ask him, what do you think of race versus IQ? Like there's a real debate to be had there, that there's so much statistical information that we can say, well, there is a difference in the racial groups based on IQ. And if that's a case, if there's even that one element, well, IQ is a very big determiner for one's success in life. Well, if there's that group identity that's associated to IQ, well, it's hard to ignore the impacts that would have on that group or people from that group. We may be individuals, but our group identity, our group characteristics, or a biological element will have a very major impact on the type of people that we become. So this has been my thought about group identity, and really I wanted to break out the three groups, because one of the problems that we're having right now is we're seeing it as a dichotomy when it's really a trichotomy, I guess would be the term, where we're really three different groups and they're all battling with each other. Jordan Peterson often will say, I'm not alt-right, because he really is an individualist, and the alt-right are nationalists and very group identity politics. And the far left will see anyone that isn't a Marxist or socialist as being far right or alt-right. But there's really three groups, and I just wanted to bring that clarity to people, that they can see these three individual groups. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd like to hear your feedback. Which is more important, the group or the individual? Or are we a product of both? And how do those two elements of one's personality really come into play? I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.